Welcome to Expand Your Fempire with Katarina Rando, the podcast for women in business on a mission, sharing ideas to support you to grow, lead, and thrive. Now, here's your host, Katarina Rando.
Welcome back to another episode of the Expand Your Fempire podcast. I'm your host, Katarina Rando, and I am blessing to be with you today because we have an amazing guest, Chris Dyer. She is a Mojo mentor for women. If you want more Mojo in your life, in your business, in your leadership, we're going to talk about that today. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Katarina. I'm so honored to be here with you all today.
Chris, I cannot wait to start talking about amplifying our mojo. Before we do that, though, I want to hear, how do you go from amazing young gal living your life to thriving entrepreneur as a Mojo mentor? What was a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. Early in my 20s, well, let's back up. When we decide as children what we want to be when we grow up, I was either going to be a teacher or a scientist. And lo and behold, I've become a combination of both. You know, a teacher loves to educate and share with other people, you know, wisdom, knowledge. And then the scientist is an individual that is collecting evidence from lots of different life experiences and then has the reflection and the insight to put them all together to understand how it all works, how life truly is just one experiment after another. So for me, the typical jobs as a teenager, I entered into healthcare imaging in my 20s. And then from there, I went into sales. And then I went back to clinical education, finished my bachelor's degree, and then went into leadership, all in the healthcare setting. I began my entrepreneur journey in 2005. I was a work-at-home mom. I had a successful online business, multiple six figures. But what was interesting is 3 years in, I realized that I wasn't taking very good care of myself. And I missed going to the gym. And I loved the energy of group fitness classes and the music and just the energy that lifted the room of being in a group of people together. So 3 years into my entrepreneur journey, I decided to go back to the gym, fell in love with a particular dance style fitness class, and that was my gateway into the fitness world.
Which one did you fall in love with?
It was Body Jam. It's a Les Mills program. Yeah, it's like a hip hop dance club, you know, because I realized, well, I'm kind of too old to go clubbing. So that actually filled that void of that high energy music, big thumping bass, right? You shaking your booty, all the fun things. And I loved that. And pretty soon into it, I started wondering, well, what would it look like if I became an instructor, if I put myself up on the stage to invoke that enthusiasm and teach and encourage people to take care of themselves, you know, do the choreography and all the teaching and everything. But prior to that, I had expanded myself in a sales capacity. So I'm kind of jumping around in my life story. So I already knew that I had courage. I've had courage all my life. Certain things will dampen it a little bit, but it's like cream. It rises to the top. The courage always comes back out. So I got certified in that class. Quickly after that, I became a personal trainer, health coach, and just taught fitness classes and did personal training with women specifically. And that is what has carried me, sustained me physically, mentally throughout the last 16 years of my life. And I realized that's the one thing that I've done better than anything else in my career, in my life, is being able to know how to take care of myself and preserve my energy and my body. And that's part of the big evolution that has come about in the last 4 years, is stepping into that place. Now that I'm on the other side of 40, you know, I'm in my mid 50s now, there's women that would love to be able to do and have the energy that I have been able to create within myself. So I want all women to feel like that. And my motto is simplification. There's a lot of distractions, overcomplications, a lot of influencers and doctors saying, oh, it has to look like this and you have to buy that, right? And it's like, yeah, no, our body wants to be healthy when we give it exactly what it needs. And so that's what has developed into my message and my platform, if you will. You know, very, very strong women in business need to have a success habit for themselves built into place every day so they can sustain. And it's not about perfection. And that's something else that I remove, is the intimidation or what it's supposed to look like, just really shifting the perspective. It's not complicated, and somehow it has become complicated out into the world, and I'm here to shift that perspective.
Wonderful, Chris. Well, that's great because, I always say perfection's not required or encouraged. I want to talk about Mojo and how to up our Mojo. Mojo, I see as like confidence. We can always use more, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you define Mojo?
Mojo is that feeling where you just feel unstoppable, right? That you trust yourself, your intuition is on high alert. Yes, it is confidence. It's also an effervescence, and it's also a level of energy that exudes a level of confidence that's unmistakable. Like when you enter in a room and you light up the room and people just know it, they feel it. It just runs off of you. That is Mojo, and that's something that's earned. It can't be bought, right? And that's part of the success routine that we needed to build in as women.
I love that. We can't buy it. We got to earn it. Now, I want to talk about how do we earn it? And let me also ask, what are the different components that we have to embrace to amplify our Mojo?
Self-discipline and consistency.
Oh, my friend, I hate that word, self-discipline, that term. I like to say self-devotion.
You know what? I do like that word. I might have to borrow that. No, truly. And you know what? I revise my language every day. Every time I hear something that resonates on a higher level, I weave that into the philosophy. So I do like that because I do talk about self-love. And I also talk about loving your future self today.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay.
I am very much about self-love, but also compassion, releasing judgment and comparison. All of those are low vibrating energy. So when we talk about Mojo, it's allowing ourselves to clear the runway of energy and emotions that aren't serving us so that we can operate at the highest frequencies possible.
Chris, let me jump back here because you said, we have to love ourselves. We want to focus on self-love, which I'm, of course, 1000% in alignment with. You made me think, though, many years ago, I had a crush on this very alluring guy, very Rico Suave. And he said to me, Katerina, you need to love yourself more. And I had no idea what was he talking about because I think I'm really good at that. So let me ask you, how do our listeners check in to see what their level of self-love is?
Well, it's really funny that you asked me that because I had a conversation this week in a mastermind room and I could tell that I ruffled a lot of feathers and there were some people triggered and activated because I was talking about health and wellness and how it does affect your success in business. And people want to have successful 6, 7, 8-figure businesses, but they're treating themselves like they're going through McDonald's drive-thru. You know what I'm saying? They don't have things in place. They're treating themselves and their bodies like, I don't even want to use the word because I don't want to diminish anybody. And I don't ever want to throw people in a place of judgment, but
they're not treating their bodies well.
Right. They're acting like they want a huge successful business, but they're not treating themselves like they are the CEO of that $1 million business. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I talk about self-care as one of the 5 pillars. If you don't have vitality, you can't thrive in business. Very important. I see 2 things, Chris. I see what you're suggesting, that, people say they want to be super successful, but they haven't mastered their self-care. And I don't think I've certainly haven't mastered my self-care. It's a journey. It's dynamic.
Always.
And you have to keep focused on it. There's that woman who's not putting enough attention on her self-care. There's also the woman, and you tell me if you see this. I see the gal that she says she wants a successful business, but all she's doing is focusing on her self-care, and she's not focusing on the business building activities. Because for some gals, it's certainly more fun and easy to go to the gym, to go to the facial location, as opposed to make some sales calls. Do you see that too, or is that just me?
I think I see the first more than the latter. And I have a very important concept that I like to share. A lot of people in the entrepreneur professional development space are familiar with a book called Profit First. And it's very, very similar.
Yeah, I like that book very much.
Exactly. So Mike Malkovich, he does an amazing job of teaching entrepreneurs, as far as accounting principles, how to pay themselves first off the top. And then everything else gets in its bucket so that all the expenses are covered. They're creating future wealth that's just compounding over time. So my perspective, I've been able to immediately, I picked out this correlation with, if we were to give ourselves 10 to 15% of our working time to ourselves during the day. And I know this is very interesting because we have a similar friend, Laura, and I was listening to one of her summits and we were talking about, well, how many hours in a day should we spend on self-care? And her answer, and I already knew in my mind, okay, 10 to 15% of your waking hours should be spent on your self-care. And it completely complemented everything that she was saying. So I knew that taking something out of a professional personal development book and also hearing it from another trusted mentor's mouth, it's like, oh, I'm on the right path. And so when we encounter very logic, left brain minded people, and we can teach them from this accounting principle why it's important and make it relatable to them on their left brain, it's like, oh, I have their attention. I can say something and relate in their left brain, in their masculine energy.
Well, I think that's really good because, you know, when you say to somebody, put more attention on self-care, that's an idea. It's not really a formula or a clear action to take. So when you say, look at your time that you're awake and take 10 to 15% of that and devote it to your self-care, which might mean exercising, eating right, meal prep, whatever it is, that is a clear formula for moving towards mastery with your self-care. I love that, Chris. That's fabulous. Okay, good. So let's say that we're doing good on our self-care. What about self-love? What about any other ingredients to master and amplify our mojo?
Self-love also requires doing some reflection. And there's 3 R's that I ask all of my clients that helps them clear the runway, because there's still boulders, energetic boulders that they're carrying around, right? Not all wounds are physical, some are wounds of the heart, right? But there's also energies that are lowering our vibration that are still keeping us from living in our true mojo and our true purpose. And a lot of clarity comes with doing that introspection, reflection work. So reflection is looking at the mirror, right? And so when we have conversations with people, something will come up. They will remind us something about ourselves, or they will trigger us or activate something that doesn't feel good. And so instead of giving a lot of attention, because I'm the scientist, I'm always the observer. It's like, isn't that interesting? So I love to neutralize anything that comes up, particularly if it's going to be on a lower level, like if there's judgment or anger or any kind of shame. Shame is the lowest vibrating energy. And anything that evokes shame in me, that's like, whoa, where did that come from? And I don't want to give it a lot of time, but I'll just kind of move it to the side and then do the reflections. Like, where's that coming from? Oh, that's coming from something in my past. Oh, I remember when I was a child or a teenager, someone else brought this same emotion up within me. So resentments, that's one of the R's. Removing resentments, because where our resentment is, there's resistance to changing, to be willing, to be open, to opening ourselves to new information, new opportunities. And when we have new information, we can make a new, better decision. So being able to remove the resentments, where they're coming from. Why do you resent somebody? What is it about that situation or that person? But also expectations or future resentments. Also being able to not expect too much of other people, right? You just put yourself out there in the best of your integrity, and things will always turn out the way they were intended to, and sometimes 10 times better than we expected. So being able to normalize our expectations of ourselves and other people. The second one is rejection. Where in our life have we witnessed rejection? That causes a low vibrating energy. So what I like to invite people to consider, well, because the universe is always working in our favor, rejection actually is a redirection. because the universe didn't want you to be with that person. The universe didn't think that situation was right for you. The universe, God, your source, didn't feel like whatever at the time was a good fit for you. And so when you look, it's like, oh, thank you. I was actually being redirected from something that maybe wasn't good for me. I was wasting too much time and energy. And then the third one is regret. Regret is, it doesn't have a place. It's being able to replace the regret, remove the judgment, remove the comparison. And when we can lay all of that energy down and not continue to carry it with us, we don't need to project it onto anybody else, because then we don't want to be perpetuating negative energy, right? We want to be pollinators of positive energy.
Chris, that's a good title. I'm a pollinator of positive energy. Bing, bing, bing.
We're the queen bees of positivity.
Queen bees. I love it. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. I like this, Chris. This is very important for us to put attention on. Eliminate the resentment, the rejection, and what was the third one?
regret.
Regret. Beautiful. Well, all of those things are heavy too, and they weigh us down. And I would agree that they interfere with our positivity and our mojo. Beautiful. Okay. So we've got some self-love. We're on top of our self-care. We have put attention on getting rid of these 3 R's. Any other ingredient to maximize our mojo?
Well, when I simplify the self-care as far as taking care of the body, I also have an acronym, and it's owner, being the owner of your health and wellness, OWNER. So the first ingredient is oxygen, right? Nothing exists without it. Nothing organic exists without it. We think about our brains. Well, when the heart stops beating, the reason why we die is because we're not pumping oxygen to the brain via the blood, right? Oxygen also leads into our breath. Our breath is our most important thing. When we're in a state of panic, overwhelmed, the number one thing that we can do is just pause, take a breath, and breathe. That normalizes our nervous system. The second one is water. Bodies require it. We can live weeks without food. We can live days without water. Water is just such an important, vital necessity for the human body. And is nutrition. Eat real food. Don't complicate it. You don't need a powder, pill, potion. If you want a supplement, that's great. 90% of your body can function if you eat real food and eat from all the food groups in proportion. E is exercise your options. I don't like to use the word exercise, so I say exercise your options, because essentially what we're talking about is move your body, and everything counts. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. It doesn't mean you have to go sit on the bike. It does mean you have to move your body. You can go out and garden. You can go for a walk. There's things that we can do that are free, that don't cost money, that are open to most anyone. And it's rest and recovery. And that is the most underrated thing. Our bodies need to rest. When we talk about recovery, there's 3 R's that we talked about, right? We're talking about energy and emotions that we're carrying around. And we need to give ourselves time to process, transition when we've had a loss, when we've had a major life transition. And as an entrepreneur, we're usually pushing ourselves. We're so driven to succeed. We're not giving ourselves self-love and self-care when we continue to push. When your body is giving you signs and signals like, you know what, I really need you to slow down and listen to me. And that's learning to trust and listen to your body. So I'm all about listening to the signals, because we're not intended to be in pain. And the body, again, wants to be healthy and pain-free when we give it what it needs. That's being the owner of your health and wellness.
All right, my friend. Oxygen, water, nourishment, exercise your options, rest and recovery. Wonderful. Any final words to maximize our mojo?
Every day, implement the profit first rule in your time. Time is our number one asset, without exception. And that's also learning how to create boundaries for yourself and not compromising yourself, because we all have goals and dreams. And obviously, in our beautiful, blossoming business, we also want to have the capacity to maintain that until we cross the finish line. We're all going to cross the finish line, but how do we want to do it? Do we want to be running and sprinting, or are we panting and crawling just to get by? No, that's survival. We want to thrive and be vivacious and have vitality. That is where Mojo is truly in the self-care. And that's where your best ideas come from.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that this morning because my mom is 90, my dad is 91, and I figure I've got a lot of years ahead of me, and I want to be, as you're saying, Chris, with full mojo in those late years. Chris, I know some gals are going to want to connect with you to get more mojo, to get their mojo back. How can our listeners connect with you?
Yes, so I do have a lead-in opt-in. It is 7secretsforsuccess.com, all spelled out, SEVENFOR. And that will allow you to be on my email newsletter. You will get updates. Your Money is in Your Mojo is a perpetual program that I do offer in a group setting. I also offer one-to-one laser focused coaching. My ideal clients are heart-centered, impact-driven women. And we talked about lifestyle, which is the mojo, right? Creating that legacy, creating something bigger than ourselves that we get to leave behind.
Bing, bing, bing.
Bing, bing, bing.
Chris, thank you so much for being with us today on the Expand Your Fempire podcast. Listener, I know you've gotten some great ideas. Pick one, pick two, get going to amplify your bliss in your business, to maximize your mojo so you can sell more, serve more, and most importantly, uplift more lives with your amazing self. This is Katarina Rando, again, encouraging you to listen to other episodes. We've got way over 100. We've got great interviews. Go to katarinarando.com to come and join me for my next upcoming workshop or event. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, listener. Be with you again next time. Bing, bing, bing.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Expand Your Fempire with Katarina Rando.